to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Oscar Cuadra, aircraft mechanic and Brazilian martial arts capoeira instructor. Please enjoy Oscar Cuadra. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today I am here with Oscar Cuadra, aircraft mechanic and capoeira instructor. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I am super excited to chat with you about all things creativity, your experience of creativity, how creativity shows up both in your professional and creative lives. But before we get there, why don't you take just a couple of moments to let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm an aircraft mechanic. I've been in the field for about 15 years now. I've also been practicing capoeira for about 20 years now, giving classes and traveling to Brazil, working with so many different capoeira groups and stuff. So I've definitely been immersed in the culture and everything that has to do with capoeira. One of my biggest passions. I love it. I love aviation too, and I think they're both great, wonderful things that require a lot of creativity and a lot of exploration, a lot of imagination, right?
Yeah, I love it. For our listeners who are maybe they've never heard capoeira before or what it is, could you give us a little brief explanation of what is capoeira?
Yeah. The best way that I could describe it is it's a martial art from Brazil that came from African descents or descendants, right? And during the slave trade, a lot of Africans were starting to lose their culture, and the way that they could carry on the culture, or this is even in a lot of history, is verbally through songs, through a lot of tradition and stuff. And so to carry that on, capoeira was kind of a melting pot of all these African cultures that kind of created the birth of it. It's interesting to see that, like, throughout all of the world, you see where there was a lot of slavery, even in the United States. There are things that are similar to capoeira, but it never evolved into what you see today in Brazil and stuff. And so people wonder, if it is African, how come it only exists in Brazil? And it was just the perfect storm of things that could create this art, this tradition, this fight that was so creative, creative in the way that they hid the martial art. They were hiding their culture. They were hiding their intentions or behavior. So many different things, and it evolved into what you see today. Now, when people say, what does it look like? I tell them it looks similar to breakdancing, because you do walk on your hands, you kick upside down, you flip, you cartwheel, you do all types of stuff. But there's also instruments and singing and clapping and all types of things, right? So it's so many things all in one.
I love it. That's awesome. And I love the history, and that there is kind of those hidden storytelling aspects within it. It reminds me of how, people used to braid maps into their hair as a way to hide kind of the map, that the escape route or something. So I can appreciate that hidden quality. And having witnessed capoeira in many places around the world, it's really exciting to get to see the different schools or different lineages and different representations of it that I have seen. So if you haven't, listeners, seen capoeira, find it in your town, go take a class or go watch some people perform or share it, because it is quite an experience.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too. It attracts so many people, right? Some people that love to dance, some people that love to fight, some people that love music. And even in the songs, it talks about it's for kids, elderly people, man, woman, everybody, right? So there's a
Yeah.
place for everybody to find something in it. And I guess going back to the idea of creativity, one of the greatest things is no matter the athletic level, there's always something that you could do, and there's always a way to play capoeira. So there's a bunch of YouTube videos of, like, for example, people that have no legs that are in there just twirling and playing the game with just hands, or people that are in wheelchairs and somebody assisting them to be a part of it. So it really is all inclusive, and no matter what your physical ability is, you can participate and enjoy the art with us, right?
I
So
love that. And I love how you described it as like capoeira play, that inherently involves creativity, or that invitation to play within the art form.
yeah, I guess I never did mention that it's when we do the practice, or what other people would call sparring, it's called the jogo. The jogo translates to a game. So when you're doing the game, you're participating by playing, right? Jogando. Yeah, a lot of things are in Portuguese, right? So you're playing. And so yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your experience, and like how you kind of sift your creative self. So what does it mean to you to be creative?
Yeah, I've stewed on this for so much, right? I think creativity is imagination, it's problem solving, it's it's so much, right? To be creative, it's funny because there's a positive and a negative context to it, right? You could be so creative that it's like, wow, you're really doing a lot there, right? And then there's other creativity where it's like, that's so stupid, it's easy. Why didn't I think of that, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
like creativity shows up in so many different ways. And uh to me, it's just about the imagination that you have, um, whether it's a problem or whether you're just creating something extraordinary. What is it that you're imagining in your mind and wanting to bring to light? The
Mhm.
creation of I don't know, art, of riddle, of philosophy,
Yeah.
right? Like so many different things that lead to such great creativity. And what's awesome about all of it is that same concept can be applied through so many different practices,
Yeah.
and right, like avenues, right? It doesn't just have to, maybe the creativity and the problem solving that you have in capoeira can also be applied in aviation, aircraft maintenance,
Yeah.
flying, whatever it is, right? Like it was interesting. I met this jiu-jitsu world champion. He was in the 1970s in Brazil. The son was so proud of his dad, and he said, "Hey, you wanted me to jiu-jitsu world champion?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Jiu-jitsu's in everything. When I change a light bulb, I think, I'm thinking too hard. How would I do it if it were jujitsu?" Right? The problem solving that's in everyday life that we maybe gain from one practice and we apply it to another. So I say all the time, capoeira is a life lesson to be applied in all things in your life, not just in this discipline, this martial art, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean, you talk about imagination, and that really stands out to me. So when I'm curious, are you someone who has a really active imagination?
I I am, yes. Yeah. It's funny because I could think back when I was a kid, right? And just like all the different like the way I would space out fairy tales I would create in my head. Like I had such an imagination for things. Um, but also it's interesting that while I do get carried away and I can be a space cadet, it's interesting that like even today, even as an adult, I still do it, and I try to stop myself, especially when I'm daydreaming, like for example, in the middle of a conversation like this, and I
Yeah.
think of a scenario like in Capoeira or something. When I was a kid, it was hockey. I grew up playing hockey, and I was thinking up plays in my head, right? And how would I do this? How would I do that? Trying to think outside the box,
Oh,
and it was never a direct way, and I think that shows up a lot in Capoeira because people see the way I approach things, and it's maybe not the normal way of approaching things, but at the same time, if you always think in the normal way, then you're always going to have the same normal results that normal people do. So sometimes you got to be a little out there, abstract, think outside the box, right?
yeah, for sure. Now, so being a kid and having an active imagination and daydreaming and thinking up hockey plays, and how have you kept that imagination, daydreaming, creativity alive in your adulthood?
Honestly, I don't think I have to try. I think it's so in me that even if I wanted to stop, because I do try to be more present. I do try to quit daydreaming, right? Be in the present
Yeah.
and live the moment and stuff. So I think there's the pros and cons, right? In some
Sure.
ways, you have to embrace your negative characteristics, if you want to call it that, because in
Yeah.
some aspects it helps me tremendously, and I think it shows up, and this is where sometimes I'm grateful for who I am and what I bring to the table, just because in capoeira and even in aviation when I'm at work and stuff, that I'm thinking in ways that other people aren't, and I'm bringing something to the table that other people haven't considered, right? So
Yeah. No, that's great. And, I think it's important to have different thinkers on a team or in a group so that you are getting different perspectives. However, when, you know, doing capoeira or as an instructor and teaching it, or even at work, when you come up against challenges, how does creativity kind of help you navigate those challenges?
yeah, I guess one is definitely stepping back
Mm,
and um trying to find a different outlook on what this could be. I think in so many times we get tunnel vision in that we want to attack this thing straight on, and we could get distracted in what's in front of us and just focus on one thing, right? And not pay attention to maybe something else that's on the other side. So I try so hard to look at the whole picture and what I do have available for me to work with, right? And like I said, sometimes in capoeira that shows up in that you have a student that has maybe they're dyslexic when it comes to movement, right? You say left, they go right. You say right, they go left. You say up, they go down, right? Like um, people that have two left feet, maybe people that just have never been much of an athlete in the first place. And you say, okay, well, how could I make this easier for them, right? And if that means that, you know what, forget left, right, left, right, left, right. We're just going to go down the way, right, 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 right. You just have one thing to think about. Right. It will
mhm.
not change the whole time, right? Simplify it in its easiest form, and hopefully, and if that doesn't work, then hey, we'll go back to the drawing board. But gosh darn it, I'm not going to give up on you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. How do you, stay in that positive space, or, when I think oftentimes people can get really down on themselves when they're challenged. And it sounds like you really see challenges as an opportunity for creativity.
Yeah, well, I think of it as a game, right? Like,
See, I knew it. I knew it.
well, it's so much fun, right? Like, I mean, I'm be honest with you, but one of my I wouldn't call it a hobby, but one of the pastimes, right? Like I love murder mysteries, or like those
Oh,
murder
yeah.
mystery games, the dinners, whatever, like who done it and things like that, right? Like I never get them, but it's still fun to try, right? Get the clues and figure it out.
It
Like, so,
totally is. That makes so much sense.
so when things are easy, it's like, how mundane, how boring, how everyday. But then when things get hard, yes, right on. Let me go get the books. We're gonna figure this out, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really hearing like this zest of curiosity and problem solving and all of these aspects. Was this like modeled for you as growing up, or is this just something that you really cultivate in your life?
Yeah, it's funny because one of my fondest memories of my dad was he would always say, uh, um, pensa como um brasileiro, right? Like think like a Brazilian. And so some of the things, and it was one of those things where he would come up with something so silly, but it was so easy, right? Like, and I wish I had an example for you, but I mean, it's one of those where you're thinking of like reaching for something and you pull on something and it comes to you instead, right? Like
Mhm.
something as simple as that, right? I can't give you exact, but he would say that to me all the time, right? And it's funny because if you ever meet Brazilians, they're so witty and they're so creative, and they always say like that they're mischievous, but like in a good way, right? Like
Yeah.
like watch them because they're definitely a person to keep their eye on,
They'll keep you on your toes.
Exactly, right? Thank you. That's a better way to put it,
Yeah.
right?
No, but I think the mischievous, it it gives an image, or it gives the visual picture of that
Yeah,
quality.
they're playful people, right? They're
Yeah.
imaginative, they're creative. I mean, there's so many um beautiful things that come out of Brazil. Samba, right? Capoeira, jujitsu. It's even interesting, right, that jujitsu landed in Brazil and that it wasn't the type of jujitsu that you see now. Now you have more practiced Brazilian jujitsu, and one of the things that they did was they almost reinvented the wheel with giving it more leverage, so that way a smaller person can have more leverage to take on a bigger person, where the
Yeah.
Japanese jiu-jitsu didn't have that aspect of it and you really had to muscle it instead of using leverage.
The creativity of how
Yeah.
martial arts shifts culturally, and it's so fascinating. I mean, I don't know if you had asked me like what's a creative, fighting technique, I probably wouldn't have been like martial arts, capoeira, jiu-jitsu. That would not have been what was coming out of my mouth. So I appreciate the education of how much creativity goes into it.
Yeah. uh, yeah. It's funny because I think of like so many different things where creativity shows up, right? Like even
Yeah.
NASA, right? Like they spent so much time trying to make it to the moon, and they had one way of thinking because they failed so many times that by the time they finally made it, like I said, it was that tunnel vision of no, we know what works and we're not going to deviate. But eventually the technology had to be surpassed, and it was hard for some of these people to get out of that mindset. And that's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing of like SpaceX nowadays, where you have these young engineers that they're like, you know what? We don't want to do it like you guys. You guys did it one way. And today we got a new way of thinking, and they're able to bring new things to the table where NASA back then would have never thought of reusing a spaceship to land itself back into
Mhm.
orbit, right? To be able to use the same space rocket and have it
Right.
land back on its stand.
Creativity and innovation for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, innovation. What a good word for creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of it. But so you strike me as someone who is easily inspired. Who or what is inspiring you these days?
Geez. That was a tough one. I think I find inspiration from so many different people all the time.
Mm.
I love hearing just I don't know, just the the hero story, but also like Kobe Bryant, right? Like
Mhm.
such a wonderful human being, and just the way he took creativity in such a different way, and just work ethic, right? Where he had it figured out that, okay, you may work out twice a day, but if I wake up at 4 in the morning and I'm able to squeeze a third workout in, it may not seem like much. Matter of fact, you probably have more talent than me, but if you multiply that by a week, then he
Yeah.
has 7 more workouts on them. You multiply that by a month, whatever 7 times 3 is, what is that? 210, like
Sure.
210 workouts, right? And that he would be able to exponentially grow in front of his competition and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Another funny thing, and we don't really know who to credit this from, but it's all the pyramids around the world, right? Like the whether it was the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Incas, whoever it was, that even today, with as much creativity and as much technology and as advanced as we are, we still have no idea how they did what they did, how they got these monolithic structures to be built, right? And so, in some ways, people even theorize that they might have been more advanced than us. Um, and that's hard to believe, right? Because there's no way. We're always learning from ancestors. How could they have possibly have been smarter? Where did we lose the intelligence, the textbooks,
Yeah.
everything, whatever it might have been, right? Something happened there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it sounds like you pull inspiration from the past, the present, the future, and you're open to it all. And I love that. I love that willingness to be inspired by so many things.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's everywhere, right? I mean, it's in so many people's stories.
Yeah.
You could talk to somebody at a bus stop and listen to their story and feel so inspired by what
Mm-hmm.
they've been through, what they've learned, what
Mm-hmm.
everything, right? So I think inspiration is just constantly around us, whether you look at nature, society, anything that you choose to um, find inspiration from, right? It's all around us.
It is. I absolutely agree. Now, in teaching capoeira or instructing, and even at work, I imagine you come across people who don't think they're creative or struggle to find creativity in their life. How would you encourage someone to find creativity in their life?
I feel like I've learned there's some people that are just stuck in their ways. If that's the way they've done it, let them be. I'm not going to change anybody, right? But
Fair.
I say all the time, like uh be the change in society that you want to see in society, right? Like so like leading by example, and just um be that inspiration for somebody else. Show up the way you'd want somebody else to show up for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so um yeah, I can't I can't tell anybody what to do, but I could at least be an example
Mm.
of something to be, how to be, right? And I'm not saying that I am that example all the time, because obviously space cadet over here, I lose myself sometimes, but
It's
you
all
know what?
good. We're
I'm trying
human.
every day to be better, right?
There
So
you go. I love it. Well, this has been such a delightful chat and conversation. I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
hmm. Honestly, I know when I'm being the most creative, and like I said, like I do space out, but it's interesting that when I could be driving and everything comes to a stop, and this is probably bad that I say it happens even when I'm driving, but it's interesting that I feel my heart rate go up. I feel like things accelerating and excitement, attention that happens and stuff. A idea that I don't want to lose right there in that moment, because something has shifted in my mind and I want to capture it right there in that moment and stuff. And so for me, it's exciting. It's like that aha moment. Oh my God, it was right there in front of me the whole time. How did I not see this?
I love
Right?
it. And that excitement, that aha experience. So thank you for sharing that. And I wonder if that you could just share a little bit about where people might go to take a capoeira class or sign up for one or see something happening within the capoeira community.
Yeah, well, if you don't live in the Denver area, I definitely recommend looking up any school that might be in your area. Go check it out. It's always a lot of fun. Everybody teaches differently, so there is no recommendation. You find your style and something that fits you. But if you're in Denver, Colorado, we have UCA Colorado and their website, ucacolorado.com. You can find them at 910 Santa Fe Drive in the Santa Fe Arts District and South Denver.
Mhm.
And their Instagram handle, UCA Colorado, and you can find them on Facebook, United Capoeira Association Colorado. So, yeah, good place to start. A lot of friendly people there. Everybody's welcoming. And like I said, it's people of all athletic abilities and stuff. So, yeah, just super fun group and just accepting of all, right? So,
Perfect. Well, for those listeners in the Denver area, definitely go check them out, go take a class. And Oscar, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.